CBS News foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has covered the Syrian civil war since it started in 2011. In her reporter's notebook, she walks us through the battles and destruction still happening almost a decade later.
The early uprisings were really political appeals to Syria's dictatorial president Bashar al-Assad to clean up corruption and to respect human rights. But he responded with force, that is to say, with the Syrian Arab army and its primitive arsenal that included barrel bombs dropped from helicopters. That's something Bashar al-Assad always denied, as he denied that his artillery targeted civilian areas. But it certainly did, as we discovered when we crossed the front line south of Damascus to spend the night with a family in the rebel-held suburb of Moadamiyah. Going into 2012, the rebels, by now armed, remained upbeat, as we discovered when we sneaked past government security into the city of Daraa. But as the rebels gained ground and the government stepped up its counterattacks, Syria fragmented into battle zones. By late 2013, the Syrian government had used chemical weapons on rebel areas to devastating effect. In eye-popping contrast, in government strongholds like Latakia, the war seemed a million miles away. By 2014, things were looking dire for Assad's forces. When we visited Aleppo, the mayor took us onto the roof of City Hall, and carefully keeping out of sniper range, he showed us that half the city was under rebel control. Literally millions of Syrians by then were on the run from the fighting, and we met them everywhere, making do in whatever shelter they could find. It felt as if things couldn't get any worse, and then they did. ISIS declared it was setting up an Islamic caliphate in Syria's eastern desert. That was the turning point. In the fall of 2015, Russia, with its deadly air power, intervened and turned the tide for Assad. We watched as night after night, Russian and Syrian warplanes attacked the eastern side of Aleppo city, one of the very last strongholds of the Syrian rebel fighters. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles east, out in the desert, another superpower, the United States, had joined the fight against ISIS, also from the air. My colleagues covered that front of the war, as in 2016 I had been banned by the Syrian government from re-entering the country. But before the ban, I did get to Palmyra, some of the most important Roman ruins on the planet. ISIS fighters had overrun the site and desecrated priceless artifacts in the museum. But mercifully, they'd left the main buildings intact. The small victory ceremony with a few soldiers underlined the fact that Assad's forces, with Russian help, were gradually taking back control of Syria. But the cost has been incalculable. And what's more, it's still not over. Syrians are still dying in the northwest region of Idlib, the very last violent pocket of this century's most complex, bloody, and heartbreaking war. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, London.